roll to establish a quorum.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Commissioners, if you can please unmute your microphones. Commissioner Treat?
Here.
Commissioner Wells?
Here.
Commissioner Verga?
Here.
Commissioner Contreras?
Here.
Commissioner Hayes?
Here.
Commissioner Berrigan?
Here.
Commissioner Bell?
Here.
Commissioner Benedict?
Here.
Vice Chair Bagley?
Here.
Commissioner Christie is absent. Commissioner Asquith?
Here.
Commissioner Few?
Here.
Commissioner Garcia?
Here.
Commissioner Morris?
Here.
And Chair McDowell.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I would like to remind members of the public and chamber that if you'd like to speak on an agenda item, please turn in a speaker slip before the item begins. After the item is called, we will no longer accept speaker slips. You'll have 2 minutes to speak once you're called on. And we will now proceed with today's agenda. First off is land acknowledgement and pledge. Vice Chair Bagley, would you like to have the honors? Sure. Everyone please stand if you're able.
To the original people of this land, the Ninasan people, the Southern Maidu, Valley and Plains Miwok, Patwin-Winton peoples, and the people of the Wilton Rancheria, Sacramento's only federally recognized tribe, may we acknowledge and honor the Native people who came before us and still walk beside us today on these ancestral lands by choosing to gather together today in the active practice of acknowledgement and appreciation for Sacramento's Indigenous peoples' history, contributions, and lives. Thank you.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next is the approval of the consent calendar. Clerk, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on the consent calendar?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have any speakers for the consent.
Are there any commissioners who wish to speak on the consent calendar? Looks like Commissioner Verga or Contreras. Oh, sorry. Yeah, actually, let me do this and then we'll introduce our new members.
Yeah, well you can revert back.
Okay, Commissioner Contreras? Oh, okay. Thank you.
The new members? Jamie, introduce the new members.
All right, is there anyone who wants to speak regarding the consent calendar? All right. Is there a motion and a second for the consent, accepting the consent calendar?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye, and you can speak verbally. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
And that motion's just confirming that we moved by Vice Chair Bagley and second by Commissioner Bell.
Correct.
Perfect. The motion passes.
Very good, thank you. All right, we do have a couple of new members on our commission that are joining us today. And so I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to introduce yourself to your fellow commissioners and the public. We'll start with Commissioner Wells.
Hi, I'm Amy Wells. I've lived in Sacramento for about 25 years now. Nice to join you. I look forward to jumping in and helping where I can.
Very well. Commissioner Contreras.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brenda Contreras. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in South Los Angeles. I have been living in the Brentwood neighborhood in the city of Sacramento for about 5 years. Just recently, I adopted a sweet Rottweiler pity mix named Kobe from Front Street. And lastly, I want to thank Councilmember Katie Maple for the opportunity to serve on this commission, and I'm ready to get to work. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Welcome. All right, moving on to our discussion calendar. Our first item on the agenda is the discussion of shelter redemption procedures and ways to incentivize spay and neuter for owners reclaiming pets. Interim Manager Hinderman.
Yeah, I thought I'd just start us off with kind of a review of the current redemption protocol. This is something we've been doing a lot of work on since, towards the end of 2025. As you know, the shelter has struggled with capacity for spay and neuter for our own pets, which resulted in 800 animals being in foster to adopt at one time. We had a huge effort from our medical team and working with partners to get those numbers down. But really towards the end of last year, the leadership team and the veterinarians, had a discussion about really trying to ramp up spay neuter for animals being redeemed, not just for second impounds, but for first as well. And so this procedure has kind of evolved since that time, and we've found that there's many different situations and lots of different holes that kind of needed to be filled, and niche cases that needed to be addressed. But I think it's really close to being complete. Particularly, many of you probably saw my email discussing the need for a hearing process. That's been a long process, getting the script from everything from a script from the city attorney's office to finding another city department that would be willing to do these for us. Luckily, the code department has stepped up and has offered to do these, so I've been working very closely with them over the course of the last month to get the hearings in place for those second impounds during the stray hold period. So a little bit of background there, but I'll kind of go through it. I won't go through every detail, but the most important details for everyone to be aware of. First thing to be aware of is that, especially when we're talking about mandatory spay and neuter, we are only able to enforce that for stray or at-large impounds. So things like arrests or hospitalizations or like a sweep, like a homeless encampment sweep, where we're out there and we take the animal because the person isn't able to take the animal. Those things would not count as an at-large impound. The kind of spirit of the code is the idea that if an animal is getting out, getting loose, has a history of doing that spay and neuter could help to reduce those roaming behaviors, because the dog isn't trying to, is less likely to want to go seek a mate. And then, of course, when it is out at large, there is a potential for it to find another dog who's not altered and possibly reproduce. So we're only talking about at-large impounds here, although I'm happy also to talk about encouraging, incentivizing spay neuters for other types of impounds as well. Another important note is you might be aware that there's a 72-hour hold for most pets that come to us, but before we make them available for adoption or other outcomes, if they have identification, we'll generally hold them for a 5-day hold. So it's the 3-day hold, 5-day hold. But our city attorney's office did let us know that for the purposes of being able to mandate spay and neuter, we only have to wait for that first 3 days to elapse. So a little bit of background there. So for first stray impounds, if an animal comes to us and it's within that 3-day holding period, we waive fees for generally only one animal. So let's say a litter of puppies comes in, generally we'll say, okay, you can have one of these puppies back with no fees, but others are going to have fees. That could potentially be waived if, say, by a supervisor, if, say, we got 2 large dogs in, the person wasn't able to, afford fees for the second dog, we might make an exception there. If we feel like we might have a hard time getting that dog adopted out. And all of these kind of steps are, balancing our capacity and our kennel space, and trying to weigh everything for the most benefit for the shelter and for animals overall. And then in that first 3-day holding period, spay and neuter is offered if medical capacity allows, but is not required. If it's after the 3-day stray holding period, our vets have said that, yes, we can go ahead and mandate spay and neuter after the 72-hour hold. It's up to the shelter as far as the outcome of the animal, so we don't need owner permission in order to spay and neuter that pet. So, you know, this is one that, you know, our vets feel we can do. We did recently lose a vet, so this is one that might be a little bit of a moving target, but generally, if it's after that 3-day hold, we will be looking to spay and neuter. We also provide a flyer. It's like how to prevent your dog from running away, so that's gonna have a big plug for spay and neuter. It's gonna talk about enrichment. It's gonna talk about reasons that dogs escape and ways that that can be prevented. It has a special section for folks who are unhoused as far as keeping those pets contained. On the second stray impound, if it's within the 3-day stray holding period, if the animal is fixed, so the animal comes in, it's already fixed, we will waive fees again. Again, just maximizing getting animals out as the priority. If not fixed, we will offer to waive the fees if they voluntarily allow us to spay and neuter the animal and sign a medical release. If they do not voluntarily allow us to fix the animal, we are required to inform them that they can get a hearing. So that's in the city code. And that's what I've been working with the code department on to establish. So that's a whole other process, probably not important to get into that here. But essentially then that animal would go on a spay and neuter hearing hold until that time when that hearing is complete. And then the determination of that hearing will let us know if we can fix the animal or if there's some extenuating circumstance that the hearing officer determines is grants them an exception, which would be rare. Let's see. We provide the flyer again, and then if it's a second impound, a supervisor or an animal control officer, if available, should go up and talk to that person and try to get more information about why the animal has gotten loose a second time, talk about the importance of preventing it, the impacts that it has on the shelter, the community when that animal gets loose. And then for 3 or more impounds, you know, eventually we want to get to the point where every third impound the animal is already fixed. There are, you know, animals that have not been fixed that could be coming in for third or more impounds. In that case, we would follow the protocol for the second impound as far as mandating spay and neuter. And if it is fixed, however, generally we're going to be charging fees. This is then the third time that the animals come to us. So in that case, again, balancing preventing the animal from getting loose and coming back with life-saving, those fees could potentially be waived, or we might offer an option for those fees to go to a collections agency. And those fees would generally be waived if we say, hey, we think this animal is going to have a really hard time getting adopted. We're full. We have a positive outcome for this animal right here. We can make space. That might be a situation where we would waive fees in that case. So there's other details, but I think that's probably the most important information for everyone to know.
All right, speakers. Y'all need to line up. Commissioner Bell.
When you talk about the hearing that they can possibly have if they don't agree to have the spay and neuter, approximately how long does that take?
It's a good question. Oh, sorry. It's a good question. That was my number one concern. So the code department has been really responsive, and we think it can be done in most cases within 48 hours. Generally, with the hearing process, there is the potential for someone to reschedule once. If they miss their hearing, as far as from everything I've seen, they forfeit the right to that hearing if they fail to reschedule or they miss it. So if they were to reschedule, so far what we have in the draft protocol we're working on is it must be within 48 hours of the original date. There's still some ambiguity that they still have, even after that hearing, have the ability to appeal. They can file a writ in the Superior Court. So my big thing is, okay, if they pursue that, do we have to hold on to this animal even longer for that process? How do we manage that? So that's still a gray area, but yeah, good question.
Commissioner Benedict.
Yeah, so on the first impound, you're saying that we waive the fees for the first animal, for one animal. So is that whether it's spayed or neutered? No matter if it's spayed or neutered?
That's right. So it's offered, but it's not required on first impound.
Okay, okay. And then on the second, if it's fixed, we waive the fees. If it's not fixed, then we waive the fees if they allow spay and neuter. And then do they pay for that, or do we give them like a low cost, or is it something that we provide?
We would spay and neuter the animal on site.
Okay.
Yes.
Before it
generally,
leaves?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're not confident in many cases that the animal will be brought back.
Right, exactly. And then just to clarify again, for the third, if it's fixed, then they have to pay fees, and if it's not fixed, and it's the third time, would it still not be fixed?
No, it'd be fixed.
It'd be
It would
fixed
be it would be treated as the second impound, essentially. The code says second or subsequent impounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much going to leave fixed by the second, then?
Yes, yes, every animal should be leaving fixed by the second if it's a straight impound, and the hearing officer doesn't make an exception.
Thank you.
Commissioner Barragon.
I retracted. She asked the clarification I wanted.
Okay. Commissioner Morris.
Thanks. So I don't know who provided this, but thank you for providing this. This is the ordinance apparently that is appropriate.
Commissioner Bagley did.
Thank you for that. Assuming that this is the current ordinance, a couple of things are curious to me. If the animal is being impounded and they pay a redemption fee, so I'm looking at item B, the first highlighted area, fee established by city council, feeding and carrying, and any other actual costs of impoundment. So it looks as though an actual cost of impoundment could be the cost to spay and neuter the animal. So we could potentially talk about a fee schedule. Whether people can pay that or not is a whole different question, but it does look like one could consider spaying and neutering the animal as part of the cost of impoundment. So that's a question that I'm putting on the table for discussion. The other question that comes in is further down under required alteration, 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph, that the hearing shall be informal, and it further says whether the animal care services manager, to look whether the animal care service manager correctly determined the requirement to spay or neuter, or whether there are any extenuating circumstances which justify waiver. I'm curious what would be considered an extenuating circumstance. And I would vote here and now today to basically say there should be no extenuating. I mean, I cannot, and I want to hear from Ryan or the team, but what extenuating circumstances for an animal impounded in a public shelter would be a reason for us to waive requiring that your animal be altered on a second impoundment? I wonder if there are any examples of extenuating circumstances you could tell us. Like maybe they were purebred animals and they were stolen and then they were let loose, but somebody filed a police report, you know, those kinds of things maybe. But are there, can you share any ideas about extenuating circumstances?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. I asked the city attorney's office that question as well. And there isn't, basically the closest we have is exactly what we looked at last month with spay and neuter exemptions for owning more than 4 dogs. So the primary one would be, has an age or health condition that with a letter from a veterinarian said this animal could lose its life or is not safe to be spayed or neutered. or potentially, you know, the show dog license one, or if it's a guide dog where perhaps very unlikely that a very well-trained golden retriever CNI dog would come into the shelter, but a dog like that could potentially have breeding rights through the agency that raised the dog, you know, could have breeding rights for it. But again, super niche case. I think probably the only one, at least that I can think of, would be a medical exemption.
I get you. That makes more sense to me to think about those sorts of
Clarification on that, would that be a medical exemption that their vet, or would it, can our vet at the shelter supersede the decision of the local vet who may or may not just do it just like a medical marijuana card and say, hey, okay, stamp?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would probably be, I don't know, I would like to think there's a code of ethics that would prevent them from doing that. Could a shelter veterinarian override it? I'm not sure. That's a good question, but I don't have the answer.
Okay. Commissioner Morris, you.
From what I was reading and what we have here, I think we're sort of driving towards the idea that a second impound should be altered, except for extremely extenuating circumstances. And I'm not seeing anything in this ordinance that would prohibit us from doing that. And I'm curious if that would be a bigger burden on shelter staff and facility, or whether ultimately we could be setting some rules that then the community understands what the rules are, given our challenges in the budget, charging fees. I get that there could be a lot of complaints about I can't afford the fees, et cetera, but still the idea of constantly not asking people to pay. I mean, we've all seen people walk up with a box of puppies, asking for free spay and neuter on those puppies, and then telling the next person in line who's also there for free, not spay and neuter, but free vaccines, that all these puppies are sold. So, they're coming to get them vaccinated while they're selling them, in the next block kind of thing. And so asking people to pay the fees seems not unreasonable and on many fronts, but I'm curious what other folks' thoughts are about that. But a blanket discussion of, if this is your second impound, this animal's going to be altered, unless it's completely outside the law.
Yeah, no, I mean, in most cases, yeah, absolutely should be. I think, as far as like the burden on the shelter, can we handle spay neuter for every single RTO? I don't know. Again, it's balancing, it's where are our priorities? Is our shelter full because we have all these animals that were adopted and are just waiting for spay neuter before they can go? But I think for sure for the second impounds, that animal's shown a pattern of getting loose, coming in. So that's a very, very sensible thing to do, even if, our spay neuter capacity is reached. I think it absolutely makes sense, regardless of the code, absolutely makes sense to alter those pets.
There's also some data here that's been provided, and I don't know, I'm guessing Commissioner Bagley is going to talk to about her sheet, but Ryan, you sent us an email. Maybe you could walk us through some of the numbers on how many animals actually are second impounds and are unaltered?
Yeah, I
I
can do
briefly
that.
read the email, but.
Sure. 1 second. Okay, so I'll just cover the stray impound numbers, unless you want me to go over the others. But essentially, this data looks at January 1st of 2025 to the end of April. In that, so it's about a year and 4 or 5 months, year and 5 months. So there were 2,142 dogs redeemed during that time. Of those dogs, 1,447 of them were categorized as stray intake. So these were not brought in by our officers after an arrest or anything like that. They were stray intake. Of those dogs, 135 of them were redeemed a second time or more. So vast majority of those dogs are first impound. And were also categorized as stray impound. And of those 135 dog redemptions, 90 dogs were listed as being altered.
So 45 unaltered ultimately out of, although this is the second time, so we could be more strict on those 1,447 dogs that came in for a second time.
Yep. And so that gap, I kind of explained down below, that gap is, again, this is from beginning of 2025, so I would suspect that skews more towards 2025 with spay-neuter challenges. As far as, us just not being as on top of that second impound spay and neuter, but then also not having this hearing process in place for those dogs that came in that holding period was also, has also been a barrier, so.
And then the second category is non-stray intake.
Yeah, so, that one, the law doesn't allow us to require spay and neuter on that second impound. So let's say a year ago, a dog was found by a community member just running loose and brought in. Well, there's their stray impound. And then let's say the dog's brought in another time because maybe it had a bite, maybe it bit someone in the home, and we end up taking it in under like a bite quarantine. That second one was not an at-large impound.
Okay.
Things can get confusing. I caught one last week or the week before that had a previous stray impound and then had been taken in under quarantine and was almost allowed to leave, but it had, the quarantine was as a result of came after an at-large impound that an officer was involved in. So that one we did require, we were able to mandate it, so.
So is there anything in any of this that says that we would be prohibited from altering second-time impounds?
Not as long as we have the hearing process in place, and we're able to give people their due process. Yeah.
Hey, Commissioner Bagley?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions, and I've been wanting to talk about this for several months. I have questions about fees, but I also want to make a statement about the hearing. It sounds like there have been no hearings for quite a while regarding, let's say, a person who is mandated to have their animals spayed and neutered. It's a second or subsequent impound for at-large or stray. They don't want to have them fixed. It requires a hearing if they choose to have one, and there has not been one in place. Is that right? Okay. I'm very familiar with potentially dangerous and dangerous dog hearings because years ago I was roped into them. And the policy used to be that you didn't use another city department and that animal control would borrow a supervisor from county to conduct the hearing, one person, and county, because they have the same rule, it mirrors it completely. They would borrow one of your animal control supervisors, and the reason that was important was because they were familiar with the industry and what goes on out in the field, and there at least was an argument that they were not biased, even though they were familiar with the job. So is there any reason given why that practice is not, or is not thought to be a prudent one that you would use in the future when you start these hearings up again?
To utilize county staff for the hearings?
Yeah, you just call over. I mean, it's really easy. Or you even call Elk Grove, and sometimes the chief comes, sometimes the actual manager or director comes, and you just borrow that person now, so you're not using another city department officer. Mm-hmm. And on paper and in practice, it seemed to be the unbiased way to do it, yet they had the experience and the knowledge of animal control services.
Yeah.
So, I mean, has the city attorney thought about that, or have you discussed that?
I think
that might be a way to go.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good idea. Fortunately, the officers, the code officers that will be conducting these hearings were animal control officers for
Great.
Front Street, so they do have that experience.
That's excellent to hear. Okay, then you really should check out whether or not it's prudent to use another city department, because even a very cursory amount of research that I've done, that rule still is in effect, and maybe it isn't. Hopefully it isn't, and you can do that without that being challenged. Fees. If I walk in and I want to redeem my dog that got out, and it's a first time, and you decide you want to hit me with all the fees possible before giving that dog back, let me ask you, are you going to charge an at-large infraction fee, which under the code is $100?
Currently, there's no fees charged.
Why is that, Ryan? And I ask rhetorically, I noticed in the audit that one of the things that they mentioned was that Front Street was not collecting fees that could be used as a resource, and there's also some indication that fees like this should go into a sterilization fund so that eventually you've got $45,000 and you can fund a high-volume event, like a MASH event. And I bet it would accrue very quickly. So I'm just kind of wondering why that ball's being dropped when, especially when it's the second, third, fourth, or fifth. I mean, I pooled and had all the portal data pooled, and there are animals, and I mean multiple animals, that have been returned 4 to 5 times unaltered. And I don't know, because there's no discussion on whether the fees were also waived, but it just seems fast and loose to me. And I'm not accusing you of that. I'm just saying it sounds like over time it has become fast and loose, and we need to tighten this up, not just for the money. Quite honestly, I think that the shelter has a lot of discretion when I read the code as to your ability to waive. But I do think that it shouldn't be willy-nilly, where if I go in one day and one staff member's there, and they like me for whatever reason, and they're willing to waive my fees, it seems very selective if the next day I walk in and it's a different staff member and they say, no, I don't like her, I'm gonna hit her with everything. So and I'm gonna assume there's no protocol in place, because we know the SOPs are still in the works at some point. So I think for an honest discussion, we should make the assumption that, yes, the ball's been dropped here, and it has been kind of fast and loose, and it doesn't matter whether you look at the fees that have been waived, and many times they shouldn't have been, because they should have been collected, especially from someone who's irresponsible, and the animal's going back second, third, fourth, fifth time. This is the burden on your shelter as to why you have to euthanize. This is the burden of space. This is the burden of breeding in the community. And it just seems we should be doing everything, every opportunity we have legally to seize that opportunity to spay and neuter. That is just something that can't be fast and loose. That is so important. And when you look at the purpose, both in the code, the county code and the city code, it is to stop these unwanted animals from being brought into the world and to curb that breeding that takes place, and I just don't think we're doing enough. I do think there should be an incentivization program on that first return. Okay, you may not legally be able to spay and neuter that animal because the law doesn't mandate it for that first one. But if you say to that person, look, the fees are $300 to $400, but look, we can work with you. We will waive that if you just let us spay and neuter your animal, and we'll charge you a nominal discounted rate for the spay, and I'm not sure what other fees you are required to charge for. It could be the vaccination fee, I think. But you let everything go. I mean, you waive everything if they're willing to spay and neuter on that first time when you don't have that law behind you that can mandate it. But for the second, third, fourth, and fifth, oh my gosh. I mean, I think that I understand the limitations. You got a small shelter, you've got, the vet situation hasn't been perfect. I get all that. Protocols are not in place. There are a lot of different explanations, excuses, justifications for the way it's been. We can tweak this and make this work if we have you on board and your staff on board, and the shelter works as a cohesive unit. And I just don't see how we can get around it when we know how small you are, and we know how crowded you are, and we know they're breeding. You know, the reason I wanted to talk about this tonight is because I have heard from the community, and I've heard from people that are out in the camps. And I would imagine those are some of the most irresponsible. Now, I do know that you have the at-large and spay designated in your data, and it seems like you have separated the confiscation. But in your portal, you have that there are some confiscations based on stray. You're right, some of them are when an owner goes to jail or goes to the hospital or isn't there or whatever, and they're tied up and they're taken that way. We're not counting those. We have to be stray or at large, and it only applies to dogs. But there is a number in your portal that pertains to field stray, impound, and over-the-counter stray, impound. And looking at the numbers, I've done all the math on your numbers and the portal numbers, and unfortunately the portal, I've taken it back 3 years. But there's a lot here that could be done. And starting with an idea that you don't waive fees if you can talk that person into spay and neuter. And that the policy being followed is consistent, meaning from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday, that your staff are versed in it, and the protocol is there, and it's written out, and they know what to do if they can't remember, and they understand it's for the big picture to cut down on the breeding, to cut down on that dog that goes back to a camp because the guy's cantankerous and he comes and he screams and yells in your lobby, because I know that goes on, screams and yells, and you've got someone behind the desk, and they know that there's a discretionary policy on fees, and the guy doesn't have a dime to his name, and he's screaming to get his dog back, and his dog is not fixed. And I know it's easier to just give him back the dog, and he's on his way. But that dog, we know, goes back to the camps and breeds. We know that. So we should take it from that point, knowing that. And we've got to tweak it. We've got to tune this up. So I think that, I don't know if we're ready tonight, and there's a lot of discussion that takes place. I knew this was going to be a lengthy deal, but I think there's going to be two motions here. One is to incentivize that first impound with a policy. And the second is, and this isn't your fault, that there has to be some follow-up on enforcement on the second, third, fourth impound of stray and at large, which means that we need, unfortunately, you to report to us, maybe quarterly, that it is tuned up and that they are doing what is mandatory in your code, in your city code. And it's a second motion that would be on enforcement, and you're coming back and telling us, yes, we've done what is required of us. We've talked to the vet staff, and they're on board. And when I look at the numbers, I mean, they're staggering. When I go back 3 years, it's like crazy. It's crazy when I look at, and of course I'm adding the confiscate strays, because I know they go out to the camps and the dogs are running around, and then all of a sudden the guy shows up and says, that's my dog. And, you know, I don't know if a ticket is being given, but the guy says, well, hell, I don't want it then, and you take it, and 2 days later he's in your lobby saying, I do want my dog back. That's a redemption if you give him that dog back. And that was a confiscate, but it was a confiscate that was a stray, at large, even though he's there saying, you know, he's always getting out and he's always doing that, okay? So I just think we need to be honest with this and not get bogged down. It's very simple. The rule is there for a reason, and we should be using it. And it will help us with every aspect that's difficult in this business at your shelter. Okay?
Commissioner Barragan.
Thank you. I think both Commissioner Morris and Commissioner Bagley had a lot of really good points that were raised here. Kind of have a more aggressive reading here. As I read the item here, it's to pass a motion with a recommendation, and to incentivize. I think that recommendation could look a lot of different ways, including a recommendation for them to consider striking language from the ordinance as written. So I'm where I'm going with this is that I actually think we're being way too lenient. I would agree with them on the redemption policy. And I think that on a lot of things that are before the city, we adopt a zero tolerance policy, which I think this should be. I mean, the pervasive nature of the amount of animals that are being euthanized and the inability to intake more animals because there's an overpopulation. The only way to solve this is to be more aggressive about spay and neuter. If you find yourself either because you were negligent or because if you allowed your animal to escape somehow, it is not the shelter's responsibility to have to endure that extra liability and that constraint on the resources. And so I'd say that a really simple way to address this would be in section 9.44.190 to strike the sentence that says, which previously has been redeemed from, which would essentially make it so that you could follow the existing law, but on the first instance of redemption, they would have to essentially be, be spayed or neutered. I think that's a zero tolerance standard, and I think we need to be that aggressive with something like this. Alternatively, I'd say I would agree with the logic that Commissioner Bagley presented in that one incentive or recommendation as part of the motion could be that in the first instance, when the animal is found at the shelter, there is a mandatory fee to redeem the animal, and the only way to waive that is if they participate in a spay or neuter. And that's a less aggressive approach. I would be the biggest proponent to be really aggressive with the zero tolerance standard, but I offer that as a middle ground. That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Few.
Is it on? Hi, that's me.
Oh.
Thank you. Is there a fee schedule in place for impoundment? Is there something actually in place that was used maybe years ago? Or would there have to be one made up? I mean, if someone came in, is there a fee you would charge them? How does that work?
Yeah, there's a number of different fees, like an at-large fee, there's an unlicensed dog fee, there's boarding fees, so it's all in place.
Are they kind of up to date with this time, where everything's up, inflation's up, boarding them, feeding them, the staff care of them? Is that compensation fair?
Yes, actually, CDD as a department, community development, just went through the fee study where all of the fees were evaluated. So our dog license and cat license fees went up. Sorry for anyone, everyone who lives in the city there. But yes, we did evaluate. Those fees.
And I agree with Hillary and Ignacio, the same thing, and Leah, that if they bring them in and there's a fee, and I don't know if it's a lot or what, that in turn for waiving that fee, we spare and neuter your dog. Then in lies, do we have the space and time and the vets to do that? So there's always a caveat to that as well.
Commissioner Verga.
Sorry, it's been a while. Okay, thank you, and I very much agree with Ignacio and Hillary and Leah, everybody, what they've been saying about this is great news. I wanted to give you a little bit of background on my understanding of how some of these fee waiver ideas and policies came into play, because we were very concerned about this 3 and 4 years ago, because we know Friends of Front Street paid for the redemption fees when people came into the shelter to redeem their animal under the purview or programs of UC Davis Court, no barriers, okay? And I know people say all the time, oh, Davis, they've got these great programs. Well, does that really make sense that there's no barriers for animals either getting in or getting out, okay? And so Friends of Front Street was paying to the fees so that these animals could go back out unaltered, okay, to breed out of control. And at the end of the day, they stopped paying those fees because they found it didn't make a difference in the return to owner numbers. And then you may ask, why would they want to do that? What would be the idea behind paying for fees and paying for the return to owner fees? It was so that you got that animal out of the shelter and your live release rates looked better, okay? And so there's a problem there with manipulating data. And there's a problem there with really having accurate numbers that are reflective of what's truly going on, okay? And I think now that we're talking about a reset at Front Street, that's just something to keep in mind as we go forward. And I'm glad to hear that, although I'm kind of surprised or shocked to hear that we're just now looking at this hearing process. You know, when you look at the data that we've collected here, and Ryan, this isn't about you. I know you haven't been running the shelter, but I know you've been working there for, you know, many years. And so, I mean, what we see on some of this data that we did, if you look at the last 3 years, that there are, for instance, 21 instances involving 3 dogs that the unaltered females were returned 7 times, okay? And if you just look at the numbers, there's 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. And this is page 2 of Hillary Bagley's information. So when you look at, you know, the last 3 years, these numbers are really alarming. And one of the things that when Commissioner Benedict and McDowell and myself took a tour of Front Street I guess that was in December, we noticed in the office area right in the front is there was a chalkboard, and we saw some names of dogs that we knew from the homeless camps. And we'd gone out with Debbie, who's here today, Tillotson, who takes care of these dogs in the River District camps. And Debbie will talk a little bit about that tonight, I'm sure, since I see her here. But we saw these names of dogs, and we were like, well, what is this about? What are these dogs' names here? And they're here all the time, and their owners are coming in to redeem them. And I can tell you the horrific circumstances that we saw these dogs living in these camps, okay? We saw, in particular, there was one, well, there was many things that'll never get out of my mind, but one had a cage that was locked, a pen, with 3 young puppies in it that were owned by Anthony. And he, I guess, routinely sells puppies for money. And he had, on numerous occasions, been able to redeem his dogs, okay, that were having these puppies, that were living in squalor and filth and, you know, really, and I'm not saying all homeless people don't take care of their animals. I know there's many that do and love their animals, but this camp that we saw that they couldn't even put the water in the bowl, okay? That Debbie and Linda would have to go out to put the water and the food in the bowl. And so, and I guess what I want to talk about too, if you look at how many animals were given back unaltered, and you just do the math on how many animals, if they're allowed to breed, that exponentially, litter after litter, you know, mama dogs are having 3 litters a year. Cats, too, we've got numbers here on cats. And you wonder why we have an overpopulation crisis. Wonder no more. This is a huge part of this. And so I would absolutely support zero tolerance. I like that. In fact, I think we've seen with the city of Sacramento in general, you know, when the mayor and the city council are talking about homelessness, and they're kind of cracking down on things. For instance, you know, if somebody's going to get housing, if they're homeless, they have to go through a drug addiction treatment programs, or they have to go through mental health programs. You know, they have to have some skin in the game. You know, they have to have some responsibility for their own lives before they're just given, you know, something for free that is of great value. So I absolutely support that, and I appreciate the information that we have here. Thank you.
Commissioner Asquith.
Concur with much of what was said, so we'll try not to be repetitive, but I want to just share what my experience was as the manager of the Downey Shelter for 2 years in Southern California. And we routinely charged the fees, and then worked with the owners on the spay and neuter at first impound. There was no reason not to. That was just a given. But with that, the other thing I want to do is just validate that people really cannot afford stuff right now, right? It's affordability for anything extra right now, whether it be fees to redeem your animal, or, the broken car, or, whatnot, the kids' clothes. I mean, these days, between the inflation and now skyrocketing gas prices, and who knows where that's going, is that there is an affordability. But with that, we can go with the carrot, and we can go with the hammer and the carrot, right? The hammer's the fees, the carrot's the spay neuter. And routinely, and I was involved in conversations, usually it started with the front desk. If it was a second or a third, our senior officers would get involved. And the value really of knocking this out at the first impound is the fact that you're not going to get, potentially, you may not get that second or third, because the roaming may cease and so forth. But then you're not having the conversations about the unaltered animals at second, third, or fourth impound. And many times the officers would take the owners, if it's third or fourth impound, we know who they are because they're coming in and everybody knows who they are, and they would go in their office and they would say, okay, here's your fees, we're starting at $700 here, blah, 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 and so forth. So that was often successful. And I just wanted to acknowledge that way back in the day, between 2003 and 2006, when I was the volunteer coordinator at the Front Street Shelter, we did discover that there was an account on the books at that time. The current manager and advocates found out that there was $200,000 in a spay-neuter fund that had just been sitting. And so we put that $200,000 to work with the good old-fashioned spay days and with the SAC program and so forth. So this can be income generating, and it can also be income generating with the fact that the city is sitting on a massive budget deficit right now. And if we can show that this is one way that we can participate, it may not generate a lot of money, but I know that they are looking at raising fees because I heard it on the news the other day. So, and then in the event that they can't, again, like everybody has said, they can't afford it, great, let's get your dogs scheduled for spay neuter, and we'll have it back on X day.
Commissioner Wells or Treat?
I just have, I think, a couple quick questions. Ryan, do we still have a partnership with Bradshaw's Spay and Neuter Clinic?
Well, we have our nonprofit funds has funded community cat surgeries there.
Just cats, no dogs go there?
Things have changed recently. They had to reduce the surgeries, so I don't believe we're sending dogs there right now.
Okay. And are the fees that have been waived, are they being waived because we're concerned that they won't take the dog back if they have to pay? Why were the fees being waived, do you know?
Yeah, like as far as first impound fees?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea behind waiving the fees is to increase life saving. If someone, we know that, folks who lose their pets, there can be very often an income, a correlation with low income there. Sure. We know that the majority of our stray dogs come from some of the lowest income areas of Sacramento. Even when we charged fees, we would very often, if not the majority of the time, waive them in order to get that dog out of the shelter. So that was the reason for going to no fees. Okay. Yeah, I'll talk more. I want to hear from everybody, but I can go into more depth.
And then if we were to do this negotiation where if you let us alter your animal, we'll waive the fees, how does the payment for the altering happen?
We would generally, so if they agreed to let us fix their pet for no fees, yeah, we would basically eat the cost of the spay neuter. We could, on the second impound, it actually says that the spay neuter will be at the owner's expense. Right. That said, the number of owners that could actually afford that would be
Right.
be very low, I would say. So, yeah, so they wouldn't be charged a fee in that case.
Commissioner Morris or Garcia?
I know I had my hand up. I guess I was trying to figure out where it says the piece about on first impound, we cannot require being altered. And so I see 9.44.190, second sentence or second line says, any dog impounded for being at large, which was previously redeemed, which previously has been redeemed. So that implies that it's a second or further. So it implies that on a first impound, you can take your dog, but it doesn't really say that. And I get it, but if we're talking about, we're gonna make a motion, maybe we wanna put some language in here to change the ordinance to say, I mean, I'm kind of wondering why we're letting them take them home the first time without being altered. I'm just putting it on the table. This is a dog that's been found stray or loose. I wonder why we're letting them take the dog home. And most of us agree that having a dog altered is in the dog's health best interests, I think. And certainly not having animals procreate. I don't know if there's any communities that require that. I'm curious if anybody knows if there are communities that require it on first impound. But I guess I wonder why we wouldn't want to alter them after a first impoundment. And if that's too big of a hill to climb, fine, I'll live with second impoundment. But we all know there's too many animals out here. And why not consider, and I don't know, that's the only place I can see, and Hillary, maybe you can point out, but that's the language I see that suggests that it's subsequent to a first impound.
I believe that's why Commissioner Barragan suggested striking that verbiage.
Yeah, but I wonder if saying more, just more plainly, if your animal is impounded by this municipal shelter, it will be altered unless you can prove some extenuating circumstances for your return.
Commissioner Barragan?
I'll be really brief. I wasn't aware of the No Borders program, so thank you for bringing that to my attention. In policy, I fundamentally really agree with that idea. I wanted to acknowledge that. But then also, it was something Commissioner Asquith you shared, which is the real problem of affordability right now. And so to be sensitive to that, I was just gonna, without retracting anything I already said, because I still stand by that, but I think if on that first redemption, there's a mandatory fee, alternative, they agree to spay or neuter with no fees, or third, maybe for those folks, it's a mandatory, painful 2-hour course with modules like we all did for ethics training. And I mean it because you could be explaining to them the value behind a spay and neuter, like how to properly care for the animal to prevent the issue from happening again. That might incentivize them halfway through to say, actually, let's just spay and neuter the pet. So I don't know, just thinking outside of the box, how are we sensitive to those folks that really can't afford it, but also discourage them from not accepting the spay or neuter? Thank you.
Commissioner Benedict?
Yeah, I agree with the other commissioners. I mean, it seems like we're all on the same page here, and we all agree. When I see numbers like 24 cats and 23 dogs in 10 days killed, I mean, this problem is coming at us very aggressively, and I think it's time to be very aggressive in it, in a solution. And I guess we're going to have some language now, and a motion with some language. I think it'd be nice to include somehow in that language, if we have control of the fees, can we make the fee very high for that first redemption? So it's a very high fee, or take it out altogether, but a high fee or a very low fee to alter. Like, it's just like such a no-brainer, or like Commissioner Barragan said, just have it so that there is no redemption fees, only altering, That's it. We really have to fix the problem. Otherwise, we're just putting Band-Aids. We got to turn off the faucet. That's all I have.
So one thing I do know that if throughout the first redemption, if they're unaltered, the fee is significantly higher than if they are altered. But with us not charging for any fees, then it's a moot point. And I agree, while it is very hard for a lot of people to afford things right now, we do need to do something because the city is taking on the care of all these animals and providing, and the staff and all of that, and somehow we have to be able to pay for all of this. With the city being in such a budget crisis, it's not like the tax dollars are really covering it. And we have certain people that are certainly utilizing the services a lot more than others. So there needs to be some sort of balance. There's a separate fee for boarding, is that correct? Are we collecting any of that?
Not on the first impound.
Okay, so they can leave them there with the shelter for a period of at least 72 hours for free, and nobody has to pay to redeem, which is a problem. That's a problem. If we are collecting fees, then we could potentially be able to have funding for even more spay and neuter, or more staff to, really help improve things, or, hey, get ahead and start saving up money for a new shelter. And these are all the things that because it looks like Front Street has been waiving fees for quite some time. So even when financial times were better, we were kind of, cutting our nose to spite our face by waiving everything and letting people come and take the animals, which puts us further into this predicament of budgetary crisis and overpopulation. I appreciate that since you've taken over, the hearing is now getting put back into place and all that, and which is great. It was interesting and disturbing to hear that it hasn't been happening for quite some time. This is something that absolutely should have been. This is the code. This is what we're supposed to be following. And one of the suggestions I have is on this code is to strike the line about animal care service manager can waive it. And maybe put in there ×1, but a blanket waiver, because it certainly doesn't seem that it's been used for only limited to extenuating circumstances for some time. I don't know as interim if you're more judicious about it, but it certainly doesn't seem like it's been limited to the circumstances of which it was written for the purpose of. Anyway, that's what I have. Manager Hinderman.
Sure. Well, thanks everyone for comments. Just wanted to jump in on a couple things. So as far as the 2 or more impounds, we're totally on board. Every team's on board. Veterinary team's on board. Animal control's on board. Homeless outreach team's on board. So I'm happy to report quarterly on that.
Awesome.
Yeah. For the fees, I think it's certainly worth considering for budgetary reasons. The first fees. It's been a number of years since I looked at it. I don't think it was a tremendous amount of money each year, but it would help. I actually ran some of the initial numbers, Commissioner Berga, on whether the return to owner rate had improved, and reported back that it hadn't. Now, correlation doesn't equal causation. There could have been other factors that dropped or that kept the RTO rate the same. If I'm someone who's lost a pet and I see that pet on the website, and if I have some hesitation towards government, or I feel like I don't have the funds, and I see no fees to pick up your pet for the first time, I think that would probably help a lot of people be encouraged to go and pick up their pet. We're actively promoting, hey, come down and get your pet. That's the spirit behind it, is that if we can actively promote, hey, there's no fees, there's no barriers to come down and pick up your pet, that could increase our TO rate. It's not for the purpose, I just want to rephrase, it's not for the purpose of making numbers look better, it's for the purpose of saving lives. Just want to make sure we're assuming good intentions. So that was the reason for it. But, you know, I as you guys know, I'm big on data, I'm big on testing. And so I think that's certainly something we could look at as far as budgetary reasons. As far as requiring spay-neuter on first impound or saying, you know what, you have to pay fees or your pet is getting fixed, like everything that we talk about, there's pros and cons to that, right? So it might prevent, so it's, again, talking about first impound animals here, it might prevent that pet from breeding, which might prevent one of those offspring from coming to our shelter one day. It's possible. And it also might prevent that pet from roaming and coming back to us subsequent times. However, let's also think about the cons of this, right? Is we know that in that time period, almost a year and a half, 135 of those dogs came back in a second time, but 1,312 did not. And if we were to take on that extra, you know, if we look at it as a year, that's about 1,000 more dogs a year. That's going to have some impacts, right? We're already struggling to keep up with spay and neuter, already struggling to keep up with medical care for the animals that we have. You know, there's other goals that we have, you know, that we've discussed, I know that are important to you, related to cats and other things. And so in my mind, I think if I went back and talked to the veterinary team and I said, hey, could we handle, what would happen if we took on an extra 1,000 dogs every year? I think that would lead to a couple of effects. One would be, we'd go back to foster to adopt, which I know isn't popular, in order, because we don't have the capacity, we got to put this pet somewhere, or we keep those animals on site, and we also keep on site that extra 1,000 dogs to, while they're waiting to be spayed or neutered, potentially for 1-2 weeks. That's going to create a big impact on kennel space. That's going to decrease outcomes. So when we're looking from things from a shelter, we're always looking at like the net impact on animal welfare. We always want to, you know, there's rarely a perfect decision, but we're always trying to choose the decision that's going to lead to the most animals helped or saved. And from my perspective, I'm happy to talk to the team about these ideas and report back. So it's not just, you know, my perspective, but I think requiring spay and neuter and having this massive amount of dogs added to our medical staff's workload, I think is going to result in worse outcomes, higher euthanasia for animals than allowing these animals to go out, most of which, the vast majority of which never do come back to us. I do want to say that, you know, for the animals that are kind of being returned many times, you know, I'd be interested to see what, you know, what percentage of those are, you know, from confiscations or sweeps. I would say most probably are, you know, from the unhoused community, like you mentioned. But, you know, that is something that we've looked at. A lot of times those animals are difficult to place as well. So they should absolutely be fixed if they're going back, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Absolutely no excuse for that. But as far as going back in general, you know, it is that balance. Is, can we find a home for this dog? Is it better for this dog's welfare to go back, you know, into this situation, or potentially not find placement with us? Those are the decisions we have to make every day. You know, today I had an owner contact me, really upset because it was the dog's 4th impound, and we said, no, you absolutely have to pay fees. We can't keep doing this, right? Because when we start getting into those high numbers of intakes, there's two considerations. One, like you've all mentioned, shelter impact, right? This dog keeps coming in, takes time to process it in, we're having to feed it, it's taking up space, as opposed to if we're able to adopt this dog out, putting it in a home where it's not going to continue to escape. So that's one consideration. The second is the dog's safety, right? If this dog keeps getting out, keeps getting loose on the streets, that could pose a risk for that dog, or if it has issues with other animals, for those other animals out there. So that's a decision that I upheld and said, no, we're not going to return this dog without fees. It's, you know, an adoptable dog. We should be able to find, you know, a better life for it. But in situations where we can't, like if that dog was going to have a negative outcome, then we might consider, you know, returning the dog. It's a lot of these situations are very case by case. It's, you know, we try to create the most detailed protocol we can, but there's some really tough decisions that we have to make every day. So just food for thought for your conversation.
Commissioner Bagley?
Yeah, I just had, I'm going to run by some fees that I looked up. I don't know. I know which ones are accurate. I'm not sure which ones you'll tell me if I'm not sure about it. Okay, so a dog is at large. It's brought in either over the counter or your officer picks it up. It's at large. Someone comes in to claim it. At large infraction fee is $100, and that's per the code, and it's in 944-020, 944-280, and 944-180. I can give you guys that if you need it. Talk to me later. First redemption fee is $40, and I don't know if it's changed, if it's gone up, or if it can go up. Boarding is somewhere between $10 to $30 a day. Ryan, you should know that. How much it is a day? Is it, I mean, I know years ago it wasn't very much, but I don't know.
I would have to look it up.
Okay. And then licensing, don't forget, for a one-year license, if they're altered, it's $25. If they refuse to alter, it's $100 for a 1 year. Rabies vaccine runs about $10, and you know Front Street is providing it for free throughout the community. So I came up with like $300, hoping it would be like $500 that we could waive, and I think that that would probably be workable. I still say that for the alteration supplies, they should probably have to pay that, but if you ended up waiving everything, that's within your discretion, and we would be fine. I mean, I know I would be fine with that if the animal's fixed. The other thing is that I remember years ago, many animal control officers calling and saying, how can we keep this dog? We don't want to give this dog back. And I said, well, don't you have a ton of fees you could charge? And they'd say, but Hillary, the nonprofits and the churches come in willing to pay them. So it's not just Friends of Front Street. There are nonprofits that come in and they're willing to pay these fees. So once again, on your second and subsequent impounds, don't get bogged down with the fact that they can't afford it. He has a discretion to waive. We want that animal fixed where we can legally do it. The other thing is, if you go into the portal, there are a ton of altered animals that get redeemed. They're altered, okay? So that was kind of a little bit outside of our discussion tonight, but those people, I mean, to me, how irresponsible is that? Multiple times, it doesn't make any difference, altered or unaltered, they should have to pay something. I mean, how many times are we going to give them a break? And then the other thing, Ryan, I had to do all these divisions with your numbers, and I'm just looking at your numbers right now, not my numbers, because my numbers are really going back to 3 years, and they are very, very high. 1,312 first redemptions over that 16-month period is about 82 per month or 21 per week. Now, I don't know the capacity of your vet clinic, but that's something to ask them. And then for the second and subsequent, you've got 135 over 16 months, which is 9 a month on an average. And it seems to me that that at a minimum is doable for any vet clinic that's attached to a shelter. So I don't know where this commission wants to start with the ones that are absolutely in violation of the city code to get the money and to get that animal fixed. However, but we should move forward on this. Or the incentivizing that first redemption. I have good language here. I mean, I can throw it out there. It's not the hardcore one that you're talking about, Mr. Barragan, but it is the middle ground.
Commissioner Wells or Treat?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ryan, I didn't ask this first time around. How much does it cost to spay or neuter an animal that comes into the shelter? Just approximately? I don't need it down to the penny.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because it's employed staff, right? So it's not like, you know, sending it out to a private clinic where it would cost, you know, $1,000 or whatever, an inordinate amount it is. So I don't know off the top of my head how we calculate what it costs to spay and neuter. It's probably a calculation of staff time, supplies. So I could report back on it though.
Just thinking about the two costs, right? All the fees and the costs and waiving all of that to pay for altering versus the cost of charging them for altering and waiving the fee. You know what I mean? I'm just
Okay,
numbers in my head.
right. Yeah, I can look it up and
It's not
report back. Okay.
earth-shattering. I'm just curious, when we're talking about waiving fees, waiving altering versus waiving all of the shelter fees, which would be less waiving. Which would be more money coming into the shelter versus the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it depends how long that dog's been there because those boarding fees can add up pretty quick. So, you know, I guess it would be like cost of spay neuter versus we just charge the spay neuter fee versus cost of all other fees, including boarding for, I don't know, 3 days
Right.
or something like that.
Yeah.
I could figure that out.
Commissioner Benedict?
Yes, you know, first of all, I'm so anti-waiving fees of any kind in any situation. Maybe because, and also free adoptions, by the way, because I just don't think that if somebody loses their dog and they need to come to a shelter to redeem the dog, frankly, I think anybody who loves their dog would beg, borrow, steal, and do anything to get the money. I don't care if it's $10,000, I will get it to get my dog. So charging even $20 for just something that says that you care enough to go get your dog, you know? So that's my 2 cents on waiving fees in any way. And that includes, and it's not on this topic, but that includes free adoptions. You've got to have some skin in the game, you know? Got to have some skin in the game and show that you care.
Commissioner Morris?
Back to me. A couple of things in terms of trying to figure out how to handle this or put our arms around it. I really, again, appreciate that you gave us this language, and it feels like the idea of putting something forward to the PNPE committee would, in my mind, be suggested edits or modifications to the ordinance, which I feel is a little awkward to do just sitting here tonight, just seeing this in the first time. So it seems to me that it would be wonderful if Commissioner Bagley, I'd be happy to work with you. Commissioner Treat and I worked on an ordinance one before, so I don't know if that's an area that Commissioner Treat wants to work on. But if a few of us got together and drafted some proposed edits to this current ordinance to get really concrete on what it is that we're looking to ask from our council. I notice in the top of this page, item C, it actually specifies about what might be extenuating circumstances. Too young, too old, too ill, too injured to be spayed or neutered. And then it's got some fees in here. I'm betting these fees are old and probably been updated, so this looks like it probably needs some updating anyway. So it seems like there could be some redrafting of a proposed ordinance change, given the dialogue that we've had tonight of folks that are thoughtful about that. Back to your question, Commissioner Wells, about the cost. I had the good fortune yesterday to spend about 6 hours in our clinic, and we altered about 20 animals, 7 cats and X dogs. I don't remember the full count, but that was 2 vets, 2 RVTs, 1 animal control technician, 3 volunteers, and then staff transferring them to the kennels and back and forth. So whatever the salaries would be for those people, the supplies for the anesthesia, the kenneling, the cleaning of the kennel, the laundry, it's a fair amount of just general cost of doing business at this shelter, but trying to figure out how you would put your hands around the cost. I mean, you could certainly figure out what other community vets charge, but those are sort of a vision of what happened, at least at our shelter, for trying to get about 20 animals spayed and neutered in about 6 hours, while also changing dressings on 3 animals with broken limbs and a couple of other things going on.
Commissioner Berga?
I just wanted to address Ryan's concerns, because I know they're real, about the challenges that make sense. That's, to add that many more animals to the spay-neuter protocols that you currently have. But I think that there are solutions there. And I know, for instance, some of us commissioners went to the SBCA recently, earlier in the year, and we've got to follow up on that, to ask them to help. They have the lion's share of the monies for the area as a nonprofit. I think they have 34 million in assets right now. And so we were talking to them about helping with spay neuter more, because the operative word is increase spay neuter. And so I think there are opportunities there with Friends of Front Street, with the SBCA, to potentially, bring together the community to raise some money. I think we'd all be happy to meet with Friends of Front Street and pitch that we would participate in a campaign to raise money for something like this. And then the other thing I want to point out is that if you reduce the number of animals that are consistently coming into the shelter, you're reducing your intake. So even though you're spending more money and you have, because it is very valuable real estate, all those kennels are, and you have that concern about, well, if we have them come in and then we have to house them for very long, there's going to be a problem there with other animals potentially losing their lives. But I think there is a balance with reducing the number of animals in our population. And then again, there are other resources like their SNP spay neuter, that's a mobile clinic, because I hate to take away our existing infrastructure of spay neuter from the community, but there are entities like SNP spay neuter that can maybe come in once a week and provide spay neuter services. And so, I think we'd be happy to, as a commission, assist with that. And I think the other thing that I'd like to point out, time is of the essence. Time is always of the essence if you're that animal in that shelter whose life is at stake. And if you look at how many animals are dying on a regular basis because there is no space or there are no homes, time is of the essence. So I think if Ms. Bagley has a recommendation, we can have a motion and a vote, and we'll see what happens. If it doesn't work out, we can go back to the drawing board, but I would certainly be supportive of that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I'm not opposed to the idea of spaying or neutering every animal that comes in. I would love that idea. I think really we're all on the same page, vast majority of ideas. It's just the implementation. I would love to have a full-scale, robust, TNR clinic, for example, and all the things that you all want as well. So it's about, understanding what the impacts will be, and that's kind of my role on the commission is just to kind of share kind of the sheltering realities, working there on a day-to-day basis as far as what we're facing. And if we don't have the ability, what problem solving can we do to create the ability? So I'm very open to any of those conversations, and I don't mean for any of my comments to mean that I'm not in support of the idea of spaying and neutering all of these animals, but just wanting to share the realities for your consideration as you move something forward.
Commissioner Berga? Oh, Contreras.
Just a few questions. So what is the timeline for a dog to recover from a spay or neuter? And we're speaking hypotheticals, right? Like if we were to implement these fees, right? What is the timeline for a dog to recover from being spayed or neutered? Would they stay in the shelter for a few days before giving it back to the owner, or is it just like they get it done, they recover with the owner? Is there like a gap in between? Just because, is there like, if there is a gap, is there a guarantee that the owner would come back for the dog? Or like what is that, I don't know the gap of when they're getting spayed or neutered, staying in the shelter for a few days and then calling the owner back, or how does that work?
It's a really good question. So there's a couple gaps, right? So there's the waiting for spay neuter. So we have a spay neuter surgery list, right? So for that, it could be a week. It just depends on our schedule. I mean, we've been at points where it's been weeks out. We've been at points where it's months out. That's when we had to turn to foster to adopt. And so that's one gap. So right now I would say, let's say maybe a few days to a week. We're doing pretty good right now. We did recently lose a veterinarian, so we're hurting there. So there's that gap. When the animal gets fixed, it'll get fixed in the early part of the day, and it'll be ready to go home that same day. I will say that some owners, so, we do work with the unhoused population a lot. They can, struggle with communication, transportation. So it is, there have been, it is advantageous to get that animal out while the person is there. They may not, arrive the day that the surgery is happening. It might take several days beyond that, so that can kind of increase that length of stay. So it kind of depends. But as far as to answer your main question, if it gets fixed, it can go home the same day.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, we're talking about if we do implement this, we're going to have an influx of those dogs that are getting spayed or neutered. So I guess what are the chances that they would go home that same day if we're getting an increase in spay or neutered? I don't know. I think I'm just kind of thinking about the increase of.
I think you're confusing the all animals, assuming that there's someone to take them home. I mean, think of, if you just went and got a new dog that you found on the street and was unaltered, and you took it to your personal vet, they send it back that same day, so it's the same thing with the shelter. The wait is only going to be till availability for an appointment.
Okay. Thank you.
Good discussion, everyone. And I agree, I'm against waiving fees. There should be some minimal something. But I'm also very much in favor of the carrot as well for the first redemption that, although I still think you should at least pay something towards that spay neuter or the boarding costs, since they are only like $10, $10, $15, whatever it is, something. Personally, I have 2 huskies. One of them can open up every single door in my house and can open and lock the deadbolt, so he can leave whenever he chooses. GPS collar, best thing invested in ever. But he has, except for when I got him from Front Street, he has not been back, because usually he's caught in the neighborhood before he gets too far. But I know that I would spend anything to get him back should he visit his origins of Front Street. So, that's, if you're a pet owner, there is an expense, and there should be that understanding that if you are going to be responsible for another life, that there is some cost to it. But Commissioner Asquith, you're on.
I just wanted to add on the cost per animal for surgery. Per animal, it depends, because a small, healthy puppy is going to take maybe 5 minutes from a good surgeon. And if you have an older, pregnant female with pyometria and all the things, that's obviously going to take longer, and money is time. Time is money. So as the conversation is closing, I would advocate for having that flexibility on the first intake of not necessarily requiring the spay neuter, but definitely charging the fees and having that conversation, having that carrot and hammer in the first. And like you said, even if it's $10, it's, charging something. And then the second is more of the mandatory.
Do we have any?
We do not have any speakers for this item.
I came in late, and I didn't put the paper over there. I came in about 5 minutes late.
Oh, if you would like to speak on this item, if you're willing to take speakers now, you can come up.
It's kind of crowded in here, so hang on. Oh, boy, you guys guys brought up all kinds of things for me. My name's Debbie, as Julie knows, and my rescue partner Linda couldn't be here tonight, but I thank you all for being here and just taking the time to hear what we have to say. I will come every chance I get because my passion are pets of the homeless or the unhoused, okay? That's my passion. And it's a whole different world than the average dog that people deal with every day. The spay and neuter is critical. It is absolutely, without a doubt, critical that these animals get spayed and neutered, especially if they belong to an unhoused, because I'm going to tell you what, they don't care. And we're down there every day. We're down there feeding them. We're down there giving them water. We're giving them shelter. We're out there in the pouring down rain trying to put up something to shelter the dogs. And the owners are in there having a good old time. You know, they don't care. So we care, you know? And the big thing is that we have to depend on you guys to say, okay, yeah, we're gonna get them fixed. We're not gonna just let them walk out the door and have, and unfortunately, pitties have a lot of puppies all the time. But I can tell you story after story where I personally, Batch was born, pouring down rain, outside in the mud. The owners are down gambling at the casino down here, and half the puppies were drowning in the mud. The mama doesn't know. She's just trying to do what she can. I had a puppy that I had to take into the vet the next day, but I took him home in midnight because it was raining, and it was so cold out there, and he's so skinny, and he was only like a week old. You know, there's a whole nother thing happening out here when you talk about spay and neuter for dogs, because they don't care. I'm just going to be really, really honest with you.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is now complete.
Okay, but anyway, whatever you can do to help these guys, I would truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, we have no more speakers.
Yeah, you can ask a clarifying question.
So, I'm just curious how easy it is, I shouldn't say how easy it is, maybe that's the wrong question. How many animals right now would you say, you know, have gone to the shelter and been released numerous times
All the time.
that are
All the
unaltered?
time. As a matter of fact, we go down and pick them up for some of these people because we've actually built a rapport with some of these homeless people. You know, it's not about a judgment. It's just about, we care about the dogs. That's what we care about. So if we know the dog, we don't want that dog sitting down in that shelter, getting put down. But then again, some of the owners, but we had Anthony, you mentioned Anthony. Anthony is notorious. And one of these days, I probably end up in jail because of that man. But he has puppies after puppies after puppies after puppies, and he sells them. He sells them. So if we get them fixed, then that's one more puppy that's not going to die. I can give you my numbers. For 3 years, we kept track of every little thing when it came to puppies. We had 155 born in the camp that we dealt with, and there's probably 5 or 6 individuals within that camp area, okay? We had 155 born. We had 49 die, just die because they were born. We had 16 of them, they kept 16 of the puppies, which means that they were just handing them out to anybody or whatever, okay? It's beyond frustration to see those, and it's hard, man. I ask any of you to come down with us when we're dealing with this, because it is a different world down there.
So, Debbie, I have a question for you, because I have been out with you.
You have, yes, you have. Yes, you have.
And I know that you had, you know, known a number of the different dogs, and one of them, I think, was Sirach, that was a
My boy, yeah.
primary sire for many of the puppies.
Yes, he is, and
Has
we've.
he been to Front Street?
Pardon?
Do you know if he's been in and out of Front Street?
He's been, yeah, in and out. The owner, adamant. I have worked on this man for the longest time, trying to get every reason I can think of to get him to just allow us. And they finally actually let us take care of the 2 females that they had, which were having puppies so fast. It was amazing. And they finally allowed us to get the 2 females, but the 2 males, they will not do. They will not do, because they want them breeding.
Okay, so this-
Even though they know medically, these dogs are going to suffer, you know?
okay, thank you.
One more question, and, because I think this is a really important point here, is that, you know, Debbie will pay out of her pocket for these animals to be spayed or neutered, but she runs into resistance. They do not want
Right.
these animals spayed and neutered, which is why, if you have the opportunity in a setting like this, if they're coming into the shelter, that you must take advantage of it to prevent future litters and to prevent exactly what she's talking about here now. That this is a common problem, and in Sacramento,
And
we
the
see
puppies
it.
suffer the most. And we had Anthony, those 12 last puppies that he had born, when it was raining here, about 2 months ago or whatever, when it was pouring down rain and everything, they came in and moved them. The cops came in and cleared them. That's another whole subject, but they came and cleared them out. Well, when they cleared them out, everybody ran. So all these dogs are sitting out there in pouring down rain, chained up. The puppies are getting soaking wet. So they came down and they took the puppies in overnight in the mama, and then they brought them right back the next day.
Those 3 puppies that were locked in that cage, they actually made it into the shelter and they were released?
Yeah.
That's
So,
really
you know,
sad.
that's where my frustration, my frustration lies, is that until you actually experience it, until you actually go down there and see it, because I got to be honest with you, when I first started doing this, I went, oh, this is no problem, man. We're just going to go down there, feed them once in a while, give them a little bit of food, a little water, you know, pet them, and everything's going to be great. No, it's an absolute war down there. It's an absolute war.
And I will concur. In fact, the reason I asked was after going out with Debbie, 'cause one of the things I do at work is I look at the intake every day and I look at the dogs that have come in. And I recognized Sirach, and I recognized, because how can you not remember the name of Fatality?
Yes.
Which is one of the dogs'
Fatality.
name, having gone to Front Street, and then they were back out unaltered.
Yeah,
And this was a couple of months ago.
yeah, a few months ago.
Actually, might have even been
Yeah.
December. But, yeah, that is, you know, just echoing what the importance of this conversation that we're having, and my appreciation to Manager Hinderman for really pushing the second redemption, they must be altered. Because I can tell you that those ones, when we had gone on the tour, I recognized some of the names from when we visited. And then I later saw them again on the intake list. So
Let me tell you, these are not bad dogs. These are not bad dogs. We had 12.
Fatality
we
was
had-
the sweetest dog, just want to say.
Yeah,
Did
it's-
not make-
Fatality is, and I hate that name,
Yes,
but the bottom line is that we had 5 fixed that belonged to one person. She ended up getting her main dog shot and killed by a cop. I'm not going to talk about that, but the bottom line is she went crazy, and she just let her dogs go. And she's had these dogs for a while. It's not like it was a one-day thing. And we found them all, and we actually brought them to Front Street and got 3 of them adopted outright. And people go, well, what, do you tell them it's from a homeless person? Well, I don't know if that needs to be said necessarily, because then it puts a judgment on the dog.
well,
know?
Debbie, I want to thank you for your time and your dedication.
I'll talk
To the
all day long,
animals.
guys, sorry.
But thank you very much, and thank you for speaking.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Benedict?
Yeah, I know this stuff happens, but this is just, it's sickening that we could have stopped this, and we did not. And this is just one instance, I'm sure. So I want to pose the question, and I'm not sure how we do it or when we do it or if we do it here. We need some sort of we need an ordinance to stop this from happening. You can't just take a dog and breed it in a cage continuously. We need some breeding, which I've been wanting to do forever, but we don't have anything about that. Anybody can just grab a dog, breed it continuously, and just make a ton of money off this dog and just keep creating more and more of a problem. So, I don't know, Commissioner Bagley, how we do this, or when we do it, or how we make a motion to do it.
Put yourself on the list, Commissioner Bagley.
I am on the list. I did try. Oh, maybe, okay.
I was asking her specifically.
We'll get to her. Commissioner Hayes. Oh,
It was only to kind of speed things up.
okay. Commissioner Asquith. Commissioner Bagley.
When this city is ready for a mandatory spay and neuter ordinance, holler. It's already been drafted. The county's already sending it for, well, we'll form a group and we'll go through it. That would be fine, or we can do it through breeding permit. That's the other type. But I've done so much research in this. I have binders on it. And if you're interested, I'll make you a binder so you can get up to speed, and then we can meet at my house and have a working group. We can do all of this. But the city has to be, I'm not going to spend hours on this and have the city say, no, we're not interested. So, you know, you work on that, everybody work on that. Okay, the other thing is, I'm ready to make a motion on, okay? Okay, now this would be an incentivizing on the first. And if somebody wants to make a different motion or tighten this up, okay, I know how you do it. You know how to do it.
All right, can I make a motion?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
All right, then I'll do that. I'd like to make a motion, am I speaking? I don't know. I'd like to make a motion I'd like to pass a motion to send a recommendation to the PE committee regarding redemption of animals by their owners, including incentivization of spay and neuter on the first impound, with a recommendation to strike out of section 9.44190, the words "which previously has been redeemed from the Animal Care Service Center after impoundment for being at," and then to insert in that area, shall pay all shelter fees incurred, including redemption, boarding, and licensing fees, or, and then we resume to the language in there, shall be spayed or neutered at the redeeming owner's expense prior to a second or subsequent redemption, with the final strike on the last sentence of that paragraph. The sentence that follows, the Animal Care Services Manager may waive this requirement when there are extenuating circumstances that justify the waiver.
Yeah.
I'd like to see
I'll,
that.
I'll second that.
Do you have it written out, what he just gave you?
I can repeat it. I can repeat it and read it without the striking, so you can
I'd like
just see
that.
it.
Can you
Okay,
just read it?
yes. So what I'm proposing the section to read is, in order to reduce the likelihood that dogs allowed to be at large shall breed unwanted animals, any dog impounded for being at large shall shall pay all fees incurred, shall pay all shelter fees incurred, including redemption, boarding, and licensing fees, or shall be spayed or neutered at the redeeming owner's expense prior to a second or subsequent redemption. That's it.
And I'd like to second that. Go ahead.
Are you taking off the language that makes spay and neuter mandatory on a second or subsequent?
That's a good question.
That's why I had it divided into two motions. We don't want to strike that language, that a forced spay and neuter occurs on a second or subsequent.
That's a good point. So, okay, so I would amend my motion to say, to actually add that at the beginning of section 9.44190 and leave the other section as is, but strike out that sentence, the two sentences that I mentioned. so that we don't alter that section. Oh, boy, okay. All right, so the recommendation is, the beginning of 9.44.90, this is language that's not there yet, would read as, in order to reduce the likelihood that dogs allowed to be at large shall breed unwanted animals, any dog should breed unwanted animals, any dog impounded for being at large shall pay all fees including shall pay all shelter fees incurred, including redemption, boarding, and license fees, or shall be spayed or neutered at the redeeming owner's expense prior to a second or subsequent redemption. Then the next paragraph is, in order to reduce the likelihood that dogs allowed to be at large shall breed unwanted animals, any dog impounded for being at large which previously has been redeemed from the Animal Care Services Center after impoundment for being at large shall be spayed or neutered at the redeeming owner's expense prior to a second or subsequent redemption. So I just added that new paragraph and then left that paragraph but struck the last sentence. That makes sense.
Okay, just a second. Yeah.
Make it simple, like saying something like, any animal, any dog impounded for the first impound, and then say any second or subsequent impound, the
we could
animal
say that.
shall be altered.
Yeah.
I mean, just something that straightforward. Because we're
Okay.
playing with language that's kind of,
Okay, let me just.
I'm happy to amend that again.
any dog impounded,
Can we just be clear with the motion? So the motion is
Amend the
to
ordinance.
Recommendation.
make the recommendation. So just make your recommendations, and then when you're making the motion, basically what you're doing is capturing your recommendations, and then you're going to pass the motion to take it to
Right,
PPE.
okay,
Yeah.
right.
Just so we're clear.
Because we're getting really anal on the language.
Yeah.
So,
Because at that point, that we really make a recommendation of what we want it to be.
right,
And then
that's right.
city attorney and
He was going
PPE
to do
can
it. Right,
make it pretty in the code.
right.
the
That's
rec-
right.
the motion is to amend the ordinance, ultimately, that's what you're.
Correct.
Yes, the motion is to amend the ordinance to require that on first redemption, the redeemer must pay all of the shelter fees incurred, including the redemption fee, boarding fee, and licensing fees, or shall have to spay or neuter at their expense.
At their expense.
Yes,
You can't
as-
waive any of the fees.
Nope.
On the first, and then on the second impound,
Yep, and I feel like nonprofits and others will step in and pay those fees, and it's money and revenue that the city needs with the $66 million deficit.
and then on second impound,
The
there's a
second, they would stay
mandatory,
as is, correct?
mandatory spay neuter.
And one thing that we can also consider / Front Street can consider is what you charge for that spay or neuter is more of a permissive of what, you could charge $25 for a spay neuter or make it, affordable for people versus actual costs once you put in salaries, et cetera, so. But again, that whole having some skin in the game and some cost to redeeming your animal.
Okay, so I'm going to ask along these lines that Mr. Barragan prepare something in writing, type it up exactly, send it to everyone, but we can vote on it because I think we understand it, but so we have it. So
the motion is, the recommendation is to amend the ordinance with a written follow-up to be forthcoming. Yeah? I don't know. Can I do that?
The motion is a recommendation to amend the ordinance to
capture the will
capture
of the commission.
the will of commission, but to require upon first redemption that individuals either have to pay all the fees or spay and neuter at their expense.
Correct.
How it actually gets written in the code is.
And also to eliminate the discretionary waiver.
And to eliminate discretionary labor.
Then on a second impound, it is mandatory that spay and neuter occur. And how the fees are worked out is.
Yep. Yes,
Still
yeah.
to be-
So there's that three pieces. Okay, I'll work on that. Yeah.
Okay, so, and, well, is your question clarification? You're on your speaker list, or? Okay, so the current motion is to make a recommendation to the PP&E committee to amend the current ordinance on first redemption, that individuals have to pay all fees, including redemption, boarding, licensing, or pay for a spay and neuter at their cost, and eliminate the discretionary waiver for the shelter manager, the last sentence in that 9.44.190 section, second paragraphs. And also maintain that second impound spay and neuter is mandatory, and there is no extenuating circumstances. So,
Do we
Commissioner
want to
Morris?
give the extenuating circumstances for too young, too old, too ill? I don't know, I'm asking.
So, may I react to that?
Yeah.
So the problem is without reading section A before, we don't know really if that applies. Like, it's a fair inference, but I can't say that that's exactly what it's meant to be tied to. So I would leave that alone.
Yeah, I wasn't saying
I didn't want to make
change
that
it, I was
assumption,
just
you know? yeah.
wondering if we wanted to let them have.
But we don't know that that's, like, I think we're making an inference, but because the section follows after and not before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is the current motion on the floor. Is there a second?
A second.
Sorry.
It'd be read back one more time.
Cecilia
From
with City Clerk's
Cecilia.
office. So since you made the motion, would
Yes.
you like to amend to what
No,
Chair said?
I think she captured what I was trying
What
to
you
I
said.
articulate.
summarized his motion.
Perfect, perfect. And then you already second. Okay, clear. City Attorney, did you have any input?
I just wanted to get clarification because I forget, one of the commissioners over on this side of the dais had suggested, and it sounded like you were willing to kind of sketch this out and writing it, bring it back to the commission, but then it would have to come back to the commission for all you to approve it before it goes. So would you like that extra step in the process? Is that part of the motion? Or are you suggesting it go
Yeah.
with this motion straight to PNPE?
Thanks for asking for clarification. I think, given this is a recommendation that's going to be interpreted by the legal team, I think the summation that she's provided now with A, B, and C is enough, and I trust that legal counsel will do what's right by the ordinance.
Just as long as everyone else is. I just want to make sure that the rest of the commission is okay with that.
Yeah, just read it again one more time. Or
Okay.
say it again.
A recommendation to amend the ordinance that requires on first redemption, an individual pay all fees incurred, including redemption, boarding, and licensing, or have their animals spayed or neutered at their expense.
At the
By the shelter. They don't get to take it home and say, "I
By
promise to do this."
the shelter, okay. And eliminate the statement of discretionary waiver by the shelter manager on
Paragraph
the
944.
spay and neuter, as well as continuing the stipulation that on second impound, spay and neuter is mandatory.
Second and further, second and beyond.
Well, if we, yeah, second and beyond, although if it's on the second, they shouldn't have a
won't be a
beyond
third.
the third, that they're,
Yeah, hopefully.
but hopefully. Counsel?
I will suggest we keep that in there because there is an appeal process.
Yes,
So it is
true.
possible that an
Second or
appeal is
subsequent.
granted and that animal does come back a third time.
So a second or subsequent impound.
Yeah, just leave the
Very good
language.
point.
That makes sense?
All right, so second or subsequent impound, it becomes mandatory,
As stated already in the ordinance.
as stated in the ordinance. Is that clear to all? All right.
Yes, but we also have a motion on the table. I didn't want to interrupt since you
Yes.
guys are still discussing, so if we're
I think we're
clear,
ready to do a
can we-
vote, and then we
Okay.
can add time.
Yeah.
So, all in favor of the current motion on the floor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, since our time technically ends in 2 minutes, I'd like to propose we add, we will say the maximum 1 hour, although hopefully not needing that much, to this meeting.
I don't know.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. All right. Still have some outstands speaking to groups. Was there, Commissioner Asquith, is there anything further on this? Commissioner Barragon, anything further?
What happened?
You're still on the speaker list.
Oh.
I'm clearing it.
Yeah.
Commissioner, okay, very good.
Most recent Excel file.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, we're moving on to item 3, which is conducting a poll to determine the priority of discussion items for the Animal Wellbeing Commission. So everybody should have a questionnaire in front of you. It was passed out prior to the start of the meeting. Listed on here is just the topic from the follow-up log we had discussed previously. The follow-up log, for those who are new, are items that that the commission has asked for in previous meetings to be agendized at some point for discussion. And there have been various ways of which things end up on the agenda moving forward. But Manager Hinderman and I had discussed that so that everybody has some say in what it is, to do a poll so that, and asking everybody to rank 1 to 11, these being the topics. Everything is pulled directly in order from the follow-up log on here. If it's not on here, it's because it's either been resolved or it was just a information request, like asking for the audit to come, so that one is not necessarily on here. But, so I would ask that everybody right now put everything, number 1 being your top priority, number 11 being your lowest priority item for discussion. We will tabulate them because of the Brown Act. Everything has to be seen clear for the public, and we'll tabulate it right now so to be able to prioritize what's to go on future agendas for our upcoming meetings. And when you have completed that, if you can pass those down so that Manager Hinderman has so kindly, maybe.
Clarification question about.
Okay. Yes. Sorry? Yeah. Oh,
So,
oh,
so what I was curious about, I just wasn't sure when it says policy procedure creation changes. Is that the SOPs or
Yes.
is that?
yes. If you look at on the follow-up log, there, it's referred to as policy and procedure. There were actually two different entries on there. One is about commissioners had asked to create them, another one is about the commissioners requesting that the vendor
Right,
bring them
okay.
forward. I just combined it into one. But yes, that's about the SOPs.
Okay, and then that we could have involvement, or I guess that would be my thing. My other thing is the new shelter steps. What, can you clarify what that means for, to?
Is it right here?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
it's
I
on the
missed
log, but
that.
it's about the
Okay,
steps. The
I'm
steps
sorry.
for-
My apologies.
For capital campaign and all that would be involved in,
Sorry.
working towards a new shelter. Correct. No, that's about, it's on the follow-up log, the creation of a new shelter, or the fundraising for a new shelter. That's because some things, like it's in red, it says it's been resolved. Correct.
Sorry. I'll have mine in a second.
Where would that be?
That one was not, I'm sorry, and I handed everybody my copy, so I, it was the log. But it wasn't necessarily a discussion item, which is like a full discussion item. It was, I believe that's one refers to that it'll be coming out in an email about, for the rescue list. So it wasn't an agenda discussion item, which is why it didn't go on here.
Well, it was just numbers. I was thinking we were going to talk about how the process works.
Yeah.
How animals are identified, how do we work with partners.
Sorry. You're like, get out of there.
Get out of her way.
Really?
Yes?
While we're on the list of our priorities, can someone tell me where my 4 dogs is?
We did.
Where?
It went to PP&E, then it got sent to commission, I mean.
Oh, the legs?
I would hope that that's in the manager's report.
Creation change. I'm sorry. Yeah, whenever you're done. I thought I was the only one left.
No, I'm also reading.
I'm like,
I didn't know what to
It's
say.
rolling, so they want it to have
We could pass this around.
Okay, thank you.
They want to.
Looks good. Maybe not.
For a minute?
It goes dark. Looks good.
Wait, are we just, we're moving over the report while they tally, or
They're gonna come back to us.
next meeting?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's like literally.
Transparency.
yeah. Paula. Juan just texted me. Yeah. I had mentioned it to him like a few weeks ago. He might have forgotten. And I read the story and I was like, I'm happy
But
to be a
his
resource.
logic was the one.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Every reporter is so interesting.
Recently, I know.
He's in Health Committee. Oh, yeah. Well, if you want my number.
Let's give it to me, because I would have happily given
I
it to
know,
you.
I know we didn't.
Yeah. But it's a great article. You accurately captured it.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. What's your number?
dog adoption efforts to increase the adoptions. I don't know where that would have fallen.
So that one, so we've already sent that to PP&E?
No, this is item number 15, increasing dog adoptions. The policy, the ad hoc work that was done last year and strategies around that, putting time and energy on that. I realize I just voted without putting that one in because I'm sorry. It's item 15 on the log.
Can you hand me yours a second? No, the follow-up log.
Oh, sorry.
This is not set in stone as far as, but it's a polling of of the commissioners to have an idea of what the priorities are as far as future discussions and agenda items.
So, point of clarification.
Yes.
I ranked the most important issue with the lowest number.
Yeah. One
Okay.
is most important.
All right, but she just said the highest total.
Your most important issue is, it should be number one.
Okay,
So
okay.
the highest number is the least important.
Okay, got it, all right.
The lowest number is the most important.
Okay, cool.
So, topic number one, euthanasia numbers, number one.
Yeah.
We've
Please,
got two tied at 69, which looks, if I'm not mistaken, is the next lowest. So, let's see. I'll do this. So first place, second, third. Second, third, 69. 70. Oh.
I can fix that.
Yeah, we'll fix that in a sec. Randomly, is it a date? 6. 6. 7. 98. 9. 10. Except, yeah.
Fix up this formatting here.
Category next to the final list.
Let's see.
Number.
Let's decrease those decimals. Oh, wrong way. So,
That's weird.
okay.
That was,
This is, I did not pretend to be an Excel expert. Okay, so 3 Feb would have been 23.
Commissioner Morris pointed out, I missed large dog ad hoc discussion for increasing adoptions.
Leave it just on the log without a priority at this point. I mean, but you could
Certainly,
say
we can
option
actually
is-
even like fold that into like something else.
We could make it 5.5.
to do a vote between 2 or 3, but part of the thing is, we also have to consider some of this is like the availability of individuals, like policy, we're going to have to get to the point we have the vendors and such. So, well, this is our suggested priority, but this is not, of course, set in stone. Because, you know, as we move forward, I don't know if you need to keep these or anything for city purposes, but, yeah, this is our projected list of, for recommendations on how to prioritize our future agenda items, so that we have them for, suggestion for, Manager Hinderman and I, staff putting together future agendas. I don't believe, but maybe, do we need to have a vote on this? I mean, it says on there. I guess it does, huh? Do we require a vote on this? We need clarification, please.
Well, it's agendized as pass a motion. You could pass a motion that this is the suggested order for the follow-up log. And hopefully, it'll move forward as suggested.
Follow-up log items.
So actually, looking at it, I realized, so our follow-up log, which usually falls into our consent calendar, if we want to discuss the items on there or make any changes, was not in the consent calendar, so it is here. So we do need a motion to accept our follow-up log as it currently stands, which would, you know, this is a prioritization of said log, but we do need to approve our follow-up log as it currently stands. And if there's anyone that needs to make any motions or amendments to what's currently listed and stated on the follow-up log, that would be this point. But we do actually need a motion to accept the follow-up log as it stands.
Didn't we do that?
No, we didn't do that. So I make a motion to accept the follow-up log as currently in the packet.
Is there any discussion on the current status of the follow-up log and our voted on recommendation for priorities? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, very good. So we are accepting our follow-up log and our, thank you everybody for voting. So we have recommendations on priorities for our future meetings moving forward. So that brings us to our Animal Care Services Monthly Manager Report.
For the record, we had no public comment for item 3.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Manager Hinderman, for the use of your computer.
No problem.
Do you need the clicker for your slides? You have
Oh, yeah, I just have one single click. All right. Well, just to review stats here, we had, oh wait, this is how I do it. There we go. So, for dog intake, we had 466 dogs, 468 cats. Kitten season is in full swing, for sure. Total outcomes, 716. Let's see, 81 cat adoptions, 255 dog adoptions, 37 dogs sent to rescue, 21 cats sent to rescue, 14, or sorry, no, that's reversed. Dark blue is cats. So 37 cats sent to rescue, 21 dogs sent to rescue, 14 cats returned to owner, 131 dogs returned to owner, 106 cat euthanasia, 42 dog euthanasias. Live release rate for dogs, 91%. Live release rate for cats, 75%. Overall, 83%. All right, and happy story of the month. This is actually, I'm not sure which one is our dog because they look so similar. That's kind of the story. But one of these dogs is Bear, a dog that we had at the shelter that went out on our Doggy Day Out program. This family saw him out and realized, wow, that's like the doppelganger of our dog. And so they just decided he had to have a twin brother. So he got adopted from that program. They are now best friends. So that was a great story. Other updates before I forget. Yes, the ordinance is on its way to PMPE committee. So actually I have a meeting tomorrow to get that staff report finalized. So hopefully the one in June. I'm not sure, but I can keep you posted on that, but it's definitely still moving. For our, we're in the final stages of the contract negotiations for the policies and procedures vendor. I think last time I told you I ran a staff survey. So we kind of went back and forth on the vendor, seeing what we could do within our $75,000 budget, met extensively with the management team, had meetings with them to get kind of their feedback on, hey, here's what you really need us for, and here's what you could do on your own. So we've identified about 24 of our highest priority policies and procedures. They're also the biggest. Return to owner policy will be included amongst many others. The kennel mock-up, so today's Wednesday. Yesterday, we started construction of a single kennel. For the new commission members, in case you're not aware, we're having some interim improvements done in between now and when we one day get to a new shelter. There were some issues identified with our kennels that impact staff safety and other factors. One of the biggest ones is a concrete curb that when you step out of the kennel, it's really easy to catch your foot. We've had people trip, and multiple other ergonomic issues and things that aren't great for animal safety either. So we did one kennel. It's going to be done tomorrow. You may have seen we did a social media push to get dogs out for we have our Pups and PJs program, which is an extension of Doggy Day Out, where people can take a shelter dog home, very short-term foster, basically. So we had a great response on that. We were able to get the entire building emptied, which that was a good trial for the real thing. The real deal is going to be, each building could take 2 to 4 weeks is the estimate I heard from the contractor. We have been really successful with these short-term emergency foster events, so that's probably the route that we're going to take. We did also set up a decibel meter to see just how loud it was. I haven't seen the readings yet, but I heard it was quite loud, the concrete grinding in particular. So I'm open to other ideas, though. Hopefully we can send those dogs to foster, and hopefully those fosters are willing to hold on to them. But there's going to be new dogs coming in, and it's going to be really challenging. I'm not sure any shelter has. Well, shelters have had to build new shelters and move to them, so I guess that might be even. But usually that shelter is done, and then they move all their dogs at once. So this is a pretty unique problem. So appreciate any creative solutions anyone has for housing these dogs while we do this. But we're going to have, it should be complete Thursday, and then we'll have 2 weeks to basically test it out, review it, make changes, approve the designs. Staff have had good input already. You're also welcome to come by and take a look. It is in the B building, formerly M building, and it's just one of the ones all the way down. It's the second from the right. It's Kennel 7. So feel free to check it out. Let me know if you want to drop by. I can go out there with you. So that's really exciting. Yes.
What exactly are the changes that they're making that are able to do in 3 days?
For the single kennel?
Yeah.
So they're doing an entire kennel all at once, as opposed to basically when they do it for real, they're gonna batch the removal of the concrete, and they're going to do the latches. So the main things are removal of the concrete curb, which is now going to leave a trench. That's a new safety issue. So then over that is going to be a metal grate, which is what most shelters have. And then we are replacing the latches, which are, complicated. They break all the time. They're really bad for ergonomics. They're not great for safety for a number of reasons. And so we're doing a new latch. We have looked at a few options there. I'm pretty optimistic about the one that's there, but the first one they tried, but we'll have the opportunity to try others if needed. And then we're also making some modifications to the pulley system. So if you've ever been there when staff pull down the rope, well, we can't get rid of the shrieking noise with this project, but they're really heavy. And so you're pulling down, and staff and volunteers are doing this repetitive motion, all morning long. And then there's a clip that's like really not ergonomic. That's just, so that's getting fixed as well. So those are the primary ones. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Let's see. It was brought up at the last commission meeting, that it would be ideal for the shelter to take in cats that are pregnant, visibly pregnant. I have worked with the leadership team and gone ahead and opened that intake category. So, and I anticipate, throughout the year, we kind of change our, the types of cats that we're intaking, basically trying to help the most vulnerable cats, as many as we can within, the medical capacity and fosters that we have. But I think, that's a very sensible, just like as we're talking about, multiple impounds, I think that's just a very sensible category of cat to take in. So we'll be moving forward with that. As far as staffing goes, and then bottle babies, we're still struggling with. We were able to get some of the kittens in our bottle baby homes that had gotten older, moved into regular foster homes that are willing to, they're willing to take those ones that are already eating on their own, which then freed up some bottle baby fosters. Not all fosters are willing to do that, because obviously if you raise these kittens from when they're 3 days old, you love to see them grow up and their full outcomes. But still in big need of that. We're going to do a big, this last week we had to do the big adoption campaign, but next week or the week after we're going to do a big urgent bottle baby push and an in-person class as well. So I'll keep you all posted on that. Anything you can do to get the word out about that would be much appreciated. Staffing. The Animal Care Services Manager recruitment is still underway. Selection is anticipated in June. The Shelter Operations Manager position is vacant, and the recruitment will be launched soon. The veterinarian recruitment is still underway. As many of you know, our salary for vets does not pay the highest, so we've always had some trouble recruiting, so it may take some time for that position. And then multiple other positions are in various stages of the hiring process. We have our dog foster and rescue coordinator position that we're moving to interviews on, animal care technicians, and also an animal care technician supervisor, and animal control officers. And we have a new animal control officer starting this month, which is exciting. You may have seen the adoption event that we posted online, used very urgent messaging there. And it got, so far it has 470,000 views on Instagram and about 380,000 views on Facebook. Some of those are going to be combined because we should, some of the people that follow us on one maybe see it on the other. It's a lot of people. We did get some good adoptions, but we are still, we're still pretty full. I was looking at our stats, and the day before the event, we had 170 dogs in shelter, and the day after, and as of last night, we had 159. So that's kind of one of the things I'm mentioning about, we do these adoption events, we have to keep the animals on site to spay and neuter, so there's we can get animals adopted, but doesn't, making space is kind of a separate part of the process. And spay neuter is a huge aspect of being able to get those kennels open and alleviate our space concerns. And then I just wanted to share some statistics from our vaccine clinic. Oh, and then lastly, on the adoptions, we're going to be putting out a press release tomorrow as well to try to get some last traffic for this weekend for our adoption event. I had our data guy kind of pull some statistics to kind of see if there's a story there. And this year, compared to last year, we've seen a 12% decrease in total dog adoptions from the month of April of last year to the month of April of this year. That was with an adoption event in early April. And a 12% decrease in adult-aged large breed dog adoptions and a 15% decrease in puppy-aged large breed dog adoptions. So I know large dog adoptions is on the list. Just keep you all apprised of that. You might see that coming out on the media in the next few days. And then for our vaccine clinics, I wanted to share, we've been doing these since 2022. We are going to do a little story on this, but we've served over 10,000 pets at this point with vaccines and or microchips. So that's 2,898 cats and 10,781 dogs for a total of 13,679 pets served at our vaccine clinics. That's it.
All right, questions, Commissioner Asquith?
I keep pushing my button and then turning it off. I apologize.
Commissioner Morris?
One statistic that I'm curious about and wonder about maybe adding to your report is, what is the return of adopted dogs to our shelter? So if we do a big adoption-free event and we adopt out 200 animals, is there a return when people come back and say this wasn't a match? So that's curious to me. Don't know if it's a good thing or not, I wonder. And then the other thing is just I wonder, like, what is our return rate on adoptions? Because, people come in, we do the best we can to help them match, but it's often we're struggling, like no one can bring a dog in to meet the dog. You have to, that's not allowed. I mean, we just don't have space for it. So I'm curious about some of those, and not to ask you to answer this now, but return, like I know we get a lot of dogs out in these big events, but.
Yeah, so are you looking at?
I didn't
It is
see
on
it
your
on
monthly statistics, just so you know, like for the April, 345 dogs were adopted, 32 came back.
Where do you?
At the top,
Stray confiscation.
stray confiscation,
surrender,
owner adoption return.
adoption return.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that only captures if they came back within the first 30 days.
I'm not sure. It's tough because it's not necessarily those same. When you're looking at number of dogs that were adopted versus number of dogs that were returned, it's not necessarily the same group. We allow returns up to 90 days, so it could, it's a little bit difficult to.
I don't know where I heard it or read it or saw it or someone told me, but I was under the impression if it was first 30, they ended up there. If it was anything longer, that number might end up in owner surrender if it was past the return date.
So we have a 30-day return policy with full refund and then a 90-day generally. So if it's within the 90 days, yeah, I'll have to check. I'm not sure of it should be in returns.
Okay.
But
No, that would just be for April, so, just under 10%. Any other questions?
That's it. That was my question. Thank you.
Commissioner Verga?
I was just wondering if you're using the Petco Adoption Center anymore.
yes, we still have the center, and we primarily use it for kitten adoptions. In the past, we've used it for puppy adoptions. I don't know exactly what it'll look like this year, but it does tend to be, these months that we ramp up usage of that.
And I asked because I remember when it launched and what a big deal it was, and that it was #1 in the United States for the largest adoptions of any Petco in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just wondering, and it was a big deal, you adopted a lot of animals there. If you need help in getting together a volunteer team, I know we talked about this before and you said it was just a lot of work and it was hard to do, but maybe there's something that we can do as a commission to try to assist to get a team together, to bring animals there, because I know off-site adoption events often are very successful. You know, you just get in a different venue, so something to think about, maybe, if that's something you would be interested in down the road. And then I would just like to comment, because I go to the shelter, you know, at least once a week, and it's very sad to see those cat kennels empty when I know how many need to get in. So I hope what you're saying today, I appreciate that about pregnant cats, but just cats in general, that you would consider allowing them in.
Yeah, as far as the off-site adoptions, that's actually, you know, would be kind of one of my goals is to create, you know, a volunteer-run off-site adoption, because we get so many, we get asked by so many, but it is a substantial, you know, workload to select and pack up and take animals out, and for if we don't promote it, for large dogs, we don't have a lot of success. If we promote, if it's kittens and they're put on the website, or puppies and they're put on the website, people kind of find their way to those. If they're at Petco, because we list them on the website there. For large dogs adoptions, which is obviously what we need the most, we've really struggled to see success there, unless we're like saying, hey, free adoption event at, you know, we've done partnerships with Meta Subaru, for example, and we send people there. I would love to find some venues. I know we've done a few now with Midtown Farmers Market, which gets a lot of foot traffic. Because I would love to find venues that you know, have enough traffic to be able to get these dogs adopted without necessarily needing shelter marketing, because we could also use that to just get people in our own doors without having to do all the transport stuff. But yeah, very open to that. I would love to have a volunteer team that could.
And I thought I mentioned the Elks Lodge Farmers Market. It's free to bring, for nonprofits to bring in animals, and they're very interested in bringing in more animal-related, like adoptions, that kind of thing. In fact, Kelly and I are talking about, you know, bringing our nonprofits there and adoptions and kittens and puppies and stuff. So I'm sure they'd be open to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Commissioner Treat,
Friend Street Pets.
Your friend reached out to me. What's her position with the Storm team?
Head of the owner of the Storm.
Owner of the Storm team.
And the president, yeah.
Yeah, so invited us.
Soccer team.
Yeah, invited us to some games.
And
pretty good
just a
traffic.
time check for everybody, we only have 17 minutes max.
Right.
Commissioner Bagley?
Just 2 questions. When are you going to tell us who the vendor is? I mean, last month it was still under negotiation. Are you ready to tell us?
I still don't think we don't have a signed contract yet, so I'm gonna.
Okay, and I just wanted to let you know that the Care Fair is this weekend on Saturday. It might affect what you're doing at the shelter, just letting you know. Or out of Bradshaw, you know, a ton of vendors this time, so it could pull some of your people. I don't know if it will or not.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
that's it.
Commissioner Asquith?
I'm sorry. I keep pushing my button. I look over
Okay.
the screen.
Never undone your thing, so touch it and undo it.
All right, no further comments, and thank you very much for the report. A lot of good work going on. All right, moving on. Any public comments?
No, we do not have any speakers for this item.
Commissioner Bagnally?
Just one thing, this is the final comment. I would like to work on a daily list, daily inventory list, which I brought up before. I'd like it on the follow-up log. And anyone who's interested in seeing what that.
Anything on the follow-up log requests go into the next section. This is only regarding.
That's what I said, final comment. I thought you were on final
No,
comment.
we're not there. We're just
Okay.
closing out manager report. Commissioner Treat, did you have something? Okay, so moving on. Request for follow-up log additions. So
Yeah, daily list. And if any commissioner wants to see what it looks like,
daily list of
daily inventory list.
inventory list. Thank you.
Just like
Well,
Bradshaw, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm cutting you
yeah.
off.
No, it's okay.
Bradshaw's been
It's a
doing it for
lot of
20
stuff.
years.
It's the disposition from the day before and the intake from the day before and the adoptions. Well, that's part of disposition. And I will say that I've adopted 2 dogs off that daily because I don't like to go and window shop at the shelter and get them all stressed out and loud and barking when you're walking through. So, I mean, I think there are people that feel that way.
And I'll just add that.
Put yourself.
Sorry.
Commissioner Treat?
just real quickly. One of my comments is that I believe this is Commissioner Few's last meeting. She's going off to college, leaving us all behind. So I just wanted us to thank her collectively for spending the time and being part of the commission.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Benedict?
Yes, I would like to, I guess, put on the follow-up log, or make a motion to put on the follow-up log, get the subcommittee together to work on an ordinance for mandatory spay and neuter.
Okay. Commissioner Asquith?
I'll just add on the daily list that while it does also include dispositions, which will include the euthanasias from the day before, it also creates transparency. And it helps people to see, what has happened and the position that the shelter is in. And if leadership can tell anybody who's asking the question the why. That's very important. And then helping the public to understand what the position of the shelter is in. It's another way to disseminate that information, but it's also a way to give people a heads up every morning at 6 a.m. or whenever they send it out, what's there, it comes straight into their inbox. Super valuable.
Thank you. Commissioner Hayes? Yes, it's commissioner comments, ideas, and suggestions.
I just wanted to update on the final plea initiative. I don't know if anyone saw the CBS News article that was put out. Thank you to Commissioner Berrigan for commenting. The subcommittee, or some members of the subcommittee, met with some volunteers yesterday over Zoom. It went well. I think we need to just confirm some clarifying things with, realigning the intent and the purpose of it, and then look forward to meeting with Ryan and other staff on Friday to further discuss implementation. That's that update.
Thank you. Commissioner Morris?
I was just curious about adding maybe some stuff about foster on. I don't know if that would go on the daily inventory list. For example, the comment about the cat kennels are empty, but I heard that 300 and something cats are in foster right now. So maybe helpful to know, because that's a volume of responsibility that the shelter carries, and I think that should be seen and not forgotten if you see empty kennels, that there's foster animals. The other topic is just to, with the new commissioners, I'll try to send you a couple of years ago, we had a vendor come in, an architect firm, who did a whole assessment of the campus and did some outcomes. And so in terms of what was just on the survey about a new shelter, that was one of the results of, or the main result of that survey. So I'll look to send that to you. And similarly, that was part of some of the improvements on the kennels that Ryan was describing. That came out of a process of working with volunteers, staff, and the consultants who voted on what priority ideas they wanted taken care of in terms of safety at the shelter.
Okay, Commissioner Asquith?
I would like to still be included in the final plea working group, if I could be added to the list. And I would like to say that one of my neighbors went to a kitten adoption event for Front Street, and the good news is all the kitties got adopted, but she was like, they ran out of kittens, so anyway. Good problem to have.
Bring more in the future. Commissioner Verga?
I would like to add to the follow-up log, because one of the things that came up talking to the volunteers the other day about final plea was that there really aren't that many volunteers in the shelter anymore, and ways that we can increase volunteer and foster support, because I do anything I can to do that. In fact, I just applied today to be a volunteer, and I would encourage all the commissioners to do that. And I'm fostering cats that Front Street didn't take in, but I think that's a good idea. And I guess I would just say, Shannon, one of my concerns about you being involved with the final plea subcommittee is you'd voted against it, though, so I'm just curious why you would want to be involved with it now.
I voted against the final plea because of the item that was added to the motion at the last minute, the graphic, that was basically a representation coming from that committee, when I was not able to give any input to this, but this was presented as part of the presentation to the commission, and that was the part that I was concerned about, and that's the reason I voted no. I am very much for a final plea process. I'm very much for a comprehensive animal placement program. I was not, that's where my concern lied.
Gotcha.
And I will say that all commissioners should have the opportunity to participate constructively in all projects, so long as you're under quorum.
Yes.
Caveat. Yes.
Yeah, that was a across the board consensus that you had. We've talked that through with Commissioner Verga about that graphic. We didn't see it ahead of time either. So that's sort of why I mentioned the realignment. And I'm so sorry for not forwarding the email. So the meeting for Friday, Kathy and you will, and Shannon, you will get that link for Friday.
As long as you stay under quorum.
Yes, that is the original subcommittee.
Very good.
I'll fill you in on the volunteer conversation.
Manager Hinderman.
Just clarification for the daily inventory list. Did you want that as a discussion item?
Yes, but I would really like to be able to forward to the commissioners what it looks like, and I've offered previously. It comes, you don't have to sign up, I can just literally.
Here's a question. Do you want it as a discussion item, or is it a request for staff if they're able to do it without having a agenda discussion item? Would that be your preference? And again, I don't know with your 7 hats that you're wearing, if that's even an option, but.
Well, where does the shelter stand on it? Do you know what it looks like, and are you amenable to trying it out? I mean, not even trying it, I mean.
If I may, this point of the agenda is not for back and forth discussions. It's only for comments, ideas, and suggestions. Brown Act prohibits extended discussion on any item not on the agenda.
So clarification then, for you. Do you want this as an agenda item, or is it a request of staff to create such a list, if at all possible? Do you want it as an agenda item to have a full discussion about this or is this just a request of shelter staff to create a daily list? Or both?
Well, then I'll take both.
All right, so if it is able to be created, otherwise we will put it as an agenda item. Commissioner Barragan? And time checked for all 6 minutes.
I wasn't here when the committee was formed last time. I'm not interested in joining the committee, but I am interested in any committee that's formed to rewrite the spay and neuter ordinance. So I don't know if it needs to be first added to follow-up log, then on an agenda to form a committee to tackle that, or if it just organically can be formed at another meeting. Question, I guess.
Can I chime in on that?
Yeah.
It requires council approval for a commission to form a subcommittee. I don't know what's
No,
already
the
happened.
commission for ad hoc is required, not subcommittee.
Okay. Okay, I just want to clear, you keep using the word subcommittee.
Okay, so.
The code prohibits the creation of a subcommittee by a commission without council approval.
Oh, so it's a working group, we're just not using the operative term. Okay, got it. All right, I'm happy to help, however. And then the second comment, just for full transparency, I totally respect all the work that the whole working group did on the final plea, and just wanted to acknowledge that I got an unsolicited phone call from CBS, and they wanted to talk about our what's been happening, but primarily they had questions about the first item on our last agenda about increasing the number of adoptable pets from 3 to 4. And I addressed that question, and then he asked me if I had any other additional things I wanted to share. And I said, well, you also missed a final plea. And he asked me about that, and he said, I didn't even know about it. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. And that's how that happened. So there it is.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I want to thank Commissioner Barragon for taking that call, because I got a similar phone call, but I was enjoying my Mother's Day and did not answer. So, Commissioner Few.
That's me. Am I on? Am I on? Yeah. I too, with the final plea, want to remain on that. You know, as working groups, I think everybody is going to have an opinion, and they need to be entitled to that opinion. There's some verbiage we thought would be cleaned up a little bit before it went to the P&PE committee, and that's kind of what we were looking at, and that's why it's kind of like, I'm not sure this and that and stuff. So that's why we did that. So that's what those working committees are. You're going to have different opinions, different views, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I'll send an email out tonight to everybody clarifying what was talked about yesterday and how some people thought we were talking about different things. We're talking about one thing. We're going to clean up verbiage, and it's going to be all good.
All right, and
I would give one word of caution. Please don't send an email to all the commissioners at the risk of everyone responds, and then you've
The
accidentally
working
created.
group,
Okay.
the 5 members, yeah, on record, don't worry.
Yes.
We're stressed.
We were well lectured on that from your staff, so email within the working group only. All right, that is the end of our list. We have no public in the audience, so I'm presuming we have no public comments.
That is correct.
All right, and with that, that takes us to the end of our agenda. Thank you, everyone, for your participation, and the meeting is adjourned.